Now let me start this video off with a question. Name the best and or greatest brand new character the book of Boba Fett gave us. And I do mean completely new, because someone like Black Chrysanthemum, for example, actually came from the comic books, which, yeah, it's cool they did that, don't get me wrong, I love seeing a comic character brought to live action, but he's only new to live action, not new to Star Wars itself. I also mean actual character, with some real substance to them. Not just someone you thought was really cool, maybe because they were played by an actor you recognize and someone you like from elsewhere. The Rancor Keeper played by Danny Trejo and the Twi'lek Club owner played by Jennifer Beals would be examples of this. Examples of characters you may have thought were really cool, but there's not a whole lot to them. Heck, I even call them that by their real names or the actors' names, because a lot of us, maybe most of us, don't even know or really care what their character names actually are or were. Another question I have then is, how many of the characters in this series were either once thought dead or were killed only to quickly come back at some point? Well, we have the main character of the series, that being Boba Fett. He was once thought dead. There's Cad Bane, who kinda unofficially dies in an unfinished episode of Clone Wars. Fennec Shand actually dies in an episode of The Mandalorian only to be quickly brought back because someone made her a new stomach after she laid out in the desert for a while. Cobb Vanth then dies in this very series, but is teased or implied to still be alive when we see him in Boba's Bacta tank in the post-credits scene. We also have people speculating that maybe Cad Bane is still alive because his heart monitor was flashing or something. And who knows, maybe these Gamorreans who fell, who were pushed off a cliff, maybe they landed on something soft and are still alive. And I'm joking, that didn't happen, or probably didn't happen. And speaking of falling, let me now ask you another question. Back when The Phantom Menace first came out and Maul was hacked in half and fell down a shaft, did you think he might still be alive? And I mean really think it, not just lament the fact that he'd been killed off after not doing a whole lot other than some cool lightsaber battles, and you maybe wanted to see more of him? And what about Palpatine falling down a shaft in Return of the Jedi way back in the day? Did you think he wasn't dead after that? Okay, so maybe, possibly you thought Palps could survive the fall, but I don't think he could survive the Death Star blowing up around him. And yeah, the EU brought him back long before the Disney canon ever did. And though no one, or I'd imagine virtually no one, ever thought Maul survived what happened to him in The Phantom Menace, he was brought back too and turned into arguably one of the best characters in all of Star Wars. But the return of dead characters, or thought to be dead characters, should be the very, very rare exception and not the rule. Otherwise, you destroy those pesky little things called tension and stakes, along with just making it feel like nothing ever really matters because anyone can come back at any time, like literally no one is ever really gone or off the table for return. And all of this points to a deeper problem they're having with Star Wars here in the Disney era: originality. It feels like they don't know what to do with Star Wars other than to keep rehashing what worked before, and or bringing in characters they know will draw fan attention, which you could certainly call using nostalgia bait. Which isn't to say you can't or ever shouldn't bring back old characters from time to time, or that I personally don't enjoy and fall for the nostalgia bait myself. But I mean, not too long ago, the complaint seemed to be that Disney and Lucasfilm weren't making Star Wars for the fans. Now the complaint by many seems to be the opposite, that they're making it too much for the fans. Which, yeah, you could make the argument that Star Wars fans are what many claim them to be, a little picky from time to time. But I'd instead argue the flaw or issue is on their end, that they can't seem to find the balance between old and new, and they should be seeking balance, and that they should probably be erring on the side of adding more new than going back to the old. Instead, two of the upcoming series we're getting are literally called Kenobi and Ahsoka, which both have nostalgia or fan bait written all over them. It also leaves me wondering if we'll ever get a show named after something, like Clone Wars for example, instead of named after someone or a small group of someones like pretty much every series that's come out and that we know is coming out. I mean, this is feeling a little MCU-like, isn't it? Where everything is named after a character. And, like I suggested in my ramble video about Book of Boba Fett on my other channel, maybe they should be thinking about taking on a more anthology style with these shows. Instead of giving us named shows for multiple different characters and named after those characters, put everything they're doing right now under one single banner. Have one show called Tales from the Outer Rim, Or maybe something like the Remnant era, if Thrawn is going to end up being the big bad guy of this time, which seems pretty likely. And don't get me wrong here, I am super excited for both of these shows. I am taking and swallowing the bait. Like a lot of fans, Ahsoka and Kenobi are two of my all-time favorites, and it's going to be just amazing to see Ewan McGregor play Obi-Wan Kenobi again. He certainly owned that role in the prequels, which is no disrespect to Sir Alec Guinness, who played him in the original trilogy, or James Arnold Taylor, who voiced him in Clone Wars. But, and I brought this up in my previous video, the question is, will and or can they really enhance his story here? Can they really tell a story worth telling, one of substance? Or will this end up being just a spectacle, or an excuse to get Kenobi and Vader on screen swinging lightsabers at each other again? Which, yeah, sounds cool, and it'll probably look great too. But if that's all there is to it, if this doesn't actually explore and expand the character of Kenobi, you know, the series is named after him, if it doesn't do that in a truly meaningful way by maybe showing him with a little PTSD or by showing him trying to commune with Qui-Gon, trying to learn to become a Force ghost, if this is just about Vader finding him so they can, again, swing lightsabers at each other, then they're going to have a lot of disappointed fans on their hands, or should I say a lot of former fans on their hands. And the thing is, they can, Lucasfilm and Disney, they can create completely new and original things and characters that people will absolutely love, both casual and hardcore fans alike. The most widely enjoyed piece of Star Wars content they've created is, almost without question, Season 1 of The Mandalorian. And I mean widely as in terms of casual fans, hardcore fans, and maybe the average viewer. And it was something that was virtually an entirely new idea with all new characters. And I have to say Season 1 because Season 2, for better or worse, did kind of turn into the special guest appearance of the week show, which isn't to say Mando completely had his thunder stolen. He did hold up well against some of the greats of Star Wars, to be honest, which is impressive and only reiterates that yes, they can create brand new characters that can and will quickly become fan favorites. Mando showing up and then completely stealing Boba's thunder in his own show was kind of proof of how well they did with The Mandalorian. But I do think, as talked about before, they might just be better off going with an anthology style here, like Clone Wars did and did beautifully. Yes, in general, you have a core group of characters and a core story, but you can and will bounce around the literal galaxy and go off topic from time to time, and you constantly bring in new characters who eventually can then be featured in their own story arcs later on. You constantly grow the larger story instead of narrow in on just a few small handful of characters or one individual character. Which might then encourage them to maybe kill off a character from time to time, or to not drastically change characters like they did, for better or worse, with Boba Fett. And sure, if they brace anthology style, he could still be a big part of all that. He could still seek to take Jabba's old throne and rule with respect, and we could have him play a part here and there in a story arc, or maybe even truly feature him in one, but not too often. We want to leave him a bit more mysterious, which I think a lot of people like about him, and even Tamora Morrison said that's the way the character should be. We could more or less leave him like he was in The Mandalorian. He's that cool guy who showed up and kicked a little ass and went on his way, and everyone pretty much loved him there, instead of how after this show he's become a point of contention. And yes, I certainly realize the scope and scale of doing something like this, and it could cause problems or issues, or just wouldn't be easy in general for them to film, but you can have multiple filmings going on at the same time and put them all under the same show. I don't think it would be that difficult to pull something like this off. Either way, I'd love to see Star Wars find and go with their own formula, and not fall into something that looks like a slightly different version of the MCU, which is kind of what it looks like right now. And the thing is, I think most of us fans really, really loved how the Clone Wars operated. I think they loved anthology style. It made both the galaxy and the war itself feel massive. It felt like we were embroiled in this huge galaxy-spanning conflict, and we never knew where we'd end up next, or what characters we'd visit next, or what the story would be next. Instead, the way they're doing it lately, we only have a small group of characters that we seem to follow. The galaxy feels tiny, and the only question we're left with is, what sand world will we be on next? Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think. Would you like to see an anthology-style show that just covered everything, or do you like these individual shows that just focus on one character, even though other characters tend to show up and steal the thunder? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.